Well, hi everybody. I'm here with Xavier, and
Hello, how are you?
we're here to talk to you about our latest curated series. Xavier's selected some wines. We had quite a tasting recently where we, together with Imogen and some of the team, we went back and had a look at a tasting back to 2010. It was quite exciting, wasn't it?
Absolutely amazing, Martin. Especially on the Pinot Noir as well as the Chardonnay. Really good overall. There are some pretty outstanding wine out there.
So why don't we start with the 10X 2010 Chardonnay? Why did you select this wine? Quick thoughts on that?
Very quick. I thought the fruit was still very vibrant, but it's starting to show a little bit of tertiary aroma. There's a lovely creamy textural component to it, but very zesty finish.
Yeah.
I find it quite expressive and still very youthful.
I've got to say this was one of the revelations of our tasting, actually.
Absolutely. Just a lot of things going on on the nose and on the palate, but texturally it's absolutely amazing. You really have that varietal character coming through, but again the richness of the mid palate, the oiliness that really bring more complexity and more interest, and then also the finish, which is super long, super zesty and super fresh.
What sort of things quickly were you thinking of as a match for the 10X Chardonnay?
I already have plenty of things in my head, but something that I really like personally is a sort of cured fish, like a oily fish that really get that mid-palate texture as well. Thinking about pork rillette and all these beautiful terrines that have a bit of fat, but quite.
How do you see it working together with the wine?
So I think especially for the cured fish, let's say a cured kingfish, you're really gonna have that oiliness of the wine, really sort of making a bit of a fusion with the oiliness of the fish as well. But then the finish really gonna clean your palate and really lift also that sort of savory, salty component of the fish.
Fantastic. So there you go, the 2010 10X Chardonnay. We can probably move that aside. And then the next wine in the series that you've selected is the 2015 Estate Chardonnay, one of my absolute favourite vintages, probably I think in the last 20 years, probably the best vintage we've had on the peninsula. But lovely to see these wines with a little bit more age now, 5 years, and we've had a special selection of some of these set aside, which I did back in 2015. So
well done, Martin.
What did you think? What were your thoughts on that?
Just good. Again, it's throughout the whole. I have to say, throughout the whole lineup was that sort of freshness and youthfulness that you had on all the wine, including the Pinot Noir as well. And I found that 15 very contemporary in style. It's got a little bit of reduction, a little bit of that flinty character, which really lifts the wine. But again, it's the acidity and that sort of seamlessness between the fruit, the texture of the oak. It's just really well articulated for me, in my opinion. And you get a little bit of that nuttiness that really brings a bit more.
And I think it's really come through a lovely evolution just in the last year when we've done our 2 tastings now to see this, and it's looking like it's in a good place. There are other vintages when you look at it and you think maybe they're in a sort of quiet phase and a bit closed, but they're really singing, aren't they? Fantastic. All right, well let's move on. We'll move on to the next selection. And wow, well this is a bit of a classic wine for 10 Minutes by Tractor, 2014, a very challenging vintage, a very low yielding year. In actual fact, I think we only got 1 tonne of fruit of Chardonnay off both the Wallace and McCutcheon vineyard. This is the Wallace 14. I know there's a lot of people who love this wine and who've discovered it over the years. But what did you think? We had managed to find a few cases to add to your selection.
So someone told me not long ago that it was the best Chardonnay ever in Australia. No, it's really good.
It wasn't me, but
Anyway, 14. I like 14. I like the classic vintage as you were talking about before. Really like that freshness. you know, it represents very well what the cool climate Chardonnay can do.
It's got a lot of concentration, hasn't it?
It's got a lot
very
of
concentrated.
It's concentrated, but it's fresh. It's vibrant. It's got that green fruit around the sort of mouthfeel, and again, very beautiful acidity. But that richness for me is more on that oiliness, really on that sort of concentrated mid palate.
All right, we'll move on to the Pinot, and it's great looking at the Pinots, wasn't it? Going back to 210, and you know, the Chardonnays had lovely consistency, and you had that sort of really that lovely bright acidity shining through. But tell us about what your thoughts were on the Pinot, because this is the first time you've really had a chance to look at a lot of these wines.
Yeah, it was sort of a revelation for me, because you always hear a lot of things about different region, different grape variety, and that tasting with Pinot Noir really made sense for me, and really put Mornington into a very dear place of mine. I thought they were quite pure, quite elegant. They had a really ethereal character, like almost that sort of savory forestry character, and super vibrant still, and so much complexity on the old vintage as well, which were like, wow, if it's only 10 years old, what's going to be another 10 years old?
What, now tell us now, 2011 is an interesting year, one of our coldest and wettest years, probably one of the hardest vintages on the peninsula in the last 20, and you know, it was a very controversial vintage in some respects around the Pinot and Chardonnay, some really interesting wines. But what did you think? You've come and looked at this, you know, without having seen it before. What were your thoughts?
So I had a lot of expectation. You know, when we talk about the sommelier choice, we're always trying to look for beauty in things that not necessarily are at the beginning. And I mean, from the nose straight away, you can see there is something very unique about those vintages. There's something very, very light and you know, sort of savory, ethereal, and sort of almost that white truffle that we talk about with Pinot Noir, and that sort of turn earth, and it was just beautiful on the palate. Again, I like acidity, I like freshness, I like when the wine really makes me salivate and I want to go and eat some bresaola, some curate meat, and I think that's a beautiful example of Pinot Noir that I would drink every day if I could.
Well, you know, which is great, and it is really interesting. I mean, we almost gave up on these wines, and at the time, the 211 Pinots, because it was so cool and wet, and they were so light in colour, and really very different. But again, they reflect the vintage, and I think looking at them now, almost 10 years on, it's I think we can have a different appreciation of them. And again, you're looking for a very different type of food matching, right? With this, say, versus a warmer vintage like the 16 or the 18 or 19 vintage, which would be very different. What sort of things were you thinking about food-wise for this?
Oh, you know, like as I said, I think when you think about like a table with friends and you put some beautiful current meat like prosciutto and things like it to start with, but also maybe a dry aged salmon, you know, sort of that oily fish that you've been dry aged, just to give a bit more flavor on the
There's a little bit of that sour cherry, isn't it? It's very sour because it was obviously a cool year, so you haven't got that really ripe fruit there. It's a very lean and mean sort of style of wine, which is the way I describe them, but it's got these really interesting things going on. So, so I think with the right food match, you could really sing.
Even on the restaurant, we do serve a duck, and we do a dry aged duck, the duck breast, just the middle of the breast, and I find with that touch of gamey nuts that will work pretty well with that tarragon sauce. You know, the sort of dried herbs character will match very well with the Pinot Noir.
Fantastic. All right.
So that's for tonight.
Well, let's move on now to the estate wine from Estate Pinot from 2013. Again, this is an interesting vintage. This was a warmer vintage. We had that little bit of that heat wave in March, which pushed things along a little bit. So you're always seeing that sort of little bit of generosity. I think this was one of the vintages that I was really pleasantly surprised with. I thought with it being a little bit warmer, maybe now start looking a bit tired, but the wines were looking fantastic. Very lovely generosity, but still sort of great acidity there that's sort of pulling it together.
Yeah, I agree with you, Martin, and I think that one day when we were doing the tasting, you were talking about exotic fruits.
Yes.
And I recognize a little bit of that exotic fruit on the 13, but it's still quite restrained, and it feels like there is a lot of power on the mid-palate, but it's just taking its time to unfold. And also for an estate Pinot Noir, I think this is a beautiful presentation, as you said, of the vintage, but also of what we're doing here at 10 Minutes by Tractor.
Fantastic.
Beautiful work on this one, really.
Okay, and then your final selection, which is the Cool Art Road, 2015 vintage again. Tell us your thoughts on...
I'm sorry, Martin, I'm taking all the stock out of your museum, but you know, we always talk about single vineyard or blended, and for me on that wine, this was the reason why we did a single vineyard, is because it outshined a lot of what we were doing in the past and before. Being a little bit lower down on the hill, you would think to have a lot of ripe big fruit. In fact, no, it's so pretty, it's so bright again, it's plenty of lovely red berries, but you got that underlying spicy fruit that really sits on your palate. And it's
how we could have opened something. There's no point sitting and doing this without a glass in our hand.
Thank you.
No, I agree. Well, it's been good fun pulling this cellar selection together, and I hope you guys get a chance to buy a case and have a look through these wines and see what you think of some of Xavier's suggestions, as well as the food matching.
Yes.
And obviously in these pretty difficult times to have some joy and some fun at home. Cheers.
Have fun, enjoy.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for watching us, and really getting into this, because this is not every day that we get to see some back vintage like this from you. It's quite generous from the company to release some of these wines. Am I going to buy a box for myself as well?
Very good. Well, of course you can buy this selection, Xavier's Curated series, off the website, and probably links with this video. But anyway, all the best and drink well, and we'll speak soon.
Also, Martin, there is going to be a chance and some opportunities, I guess, in the restaurant when we reopen.
Yes.
Like little bit by little bit, but maybe trying those wines.
Yes, exactly.
So we welcome you in that restaurant when we reopen.
We're looking forward to that.
Yes.
Cheers.
Chin chin.
Cheers,
Martin.
Cheers.